In this tutorial, I'll show you how to turn a simple shape like this into a stone wonder like this. And best of all, my stone model is both low poly and very game ready. Welcome to this exciting Blender tutorial. Today I'll guide you through the transformation of any basic low poly object into a stunning detailed stone model. But that's not all. We'll take it a step further by making it a low poly game ready model. So brace yourself as we delve into the realm of Blender alchemy, utilizing powerful tools like the geometry nodes, PBR textures with seamless edge blending, and the ultimate cherry on top, the process of baking out diffuse, roughness, and normal maps into our newly crafted low poly mesh. Get ready for a creative journey that will elevate both your understanding and productivity in Blender. Let's start with the default cube. If you don't have one, then press Shift-A, go to Mesh and select Cube. In the Outliner window, double-click on the name of your shape and rename it to something like Stone High. Open up a Geometry Nodes window. With your cube selected, click on New in the Geometry Nodes editor window. Give your geometry node a name. I will call mine Rock Surface. Add in a subdivision surface node by ensuring that your cursor is within the Geometry Nodes editor window and pressing Shift-A. And then, in addition, S for search if you're using a version of Blender before version 4. Then start typing the name of the node, Subdivision Surface. Choose it from the list. Drop the Subdivision Surface node between the group input and output. For now, let's set the level to 4 and the edge crease to 0.4. We have successfully increased the geometry of our object. Well done us. Let's smooth it out by adding in another node. Set Shade Smooth. Add this node in the same way as before. Shift-A, S for search for older versions. Type in Shade Smooth and choose from the list. Drop the Shade Smooth node between the Subdivision Surface node and the group output. Leave the settings for this node as they are. In order for us to add random stone or rocky detail to our shape, we will need to bring in a Set Position node and drop it between the Set Shade Smooth and group output nodes. But the Set Position node alone will do nothing. Next, we need to add a Noise Texture node. From the Offset Input socket on the Set Position node, click and drag to add a Noise Texture node, and this connects to the Color output. In the Noise Texture node, change the dimensions drop down to 4D, Scale to 2, Detail to 15, and Distortion to 1. Leave other settings as they are. As you can see, our lumpy cube is no longer sitting on its origin point. We can fix this by adding in a Mix Color node and set it to Linear Light. Link up the output from Noise to Input B on the Mix Color node and set A to black. Our model should now be in the correct position. Now that we've set up our stone geometry node, let's tweak the settings. After all, our shape is not looking very stone-like just yet. But before we do that, it's a good idea to simplify this process by adding in the useful settings into the group input so that we can easily change them via the modifier tab. Let's start by dragging the level input from the subdivision surface node into an empty slot on the group input node. If you can't see this panel here within the geometry node editor, press N for November on your keyboard. Click on the group tab. Then, to rename it, double-click on Level in this list here. Change it to something like Subdivision Level and press Enter on your keyboard. As you can see over here under the Modifiers tab in the Properties window, our Rock Surface Geometry Node modifier has a new setting called Subdivision Level. As we add more items to the group input, we will see new settings appear here. Let's add some more. Back to the Geometry Node editor. Next, locate the Mixed Color node. It should be labeled Linear Light. Connect the Factor input to an empty slot on the group input. Then, change the name of the new socket to Bumpiness. Let's quickly go through all of the others. Connect the edge crease of the Subdivision Surface node to a new node and call it edge smoothness. Connect the W input from noise texture to a new socket in group input. Call it surface random. Connect the scale input from noise texture to a new socket in group input. Call it surface scale. Connect the detail input from noise texture to a new socket in group input. Call it surface detail. Connect the roughness input from noise texture to a new socket in the group input. Call it surface roughness. Connect the distortion input from noise texture to a new socket in group input. Call it surface distortion. We can now tweak the settings on our rock surface geometry node modifier to get the desired effect. I normally start by reducing the bumpiness to around the 0.2 mark and bring the edge smoothness to 0.4. I can always increase and decrease these settings until I achieve the result I am after. If you're in the habit of using the asset browser, I suggest you add this geometry node setup to a library, so that you can easily drag and drop this effect on any shape at any point. Although I won't be covering how to manage an asset library in this tutorial, you can add any geometry node to an asset library by right-clicking on the name of the node tree and choosing Mark as Asset. Now that we've completed the work on our stone or rock geometry node, let's turn our attention to adding a realistic PBR rock texture. At some point in the future, I will bundle up a number of my own rock and stone textures, including the one in this tutorial, for you to download for perhaps a small fee on Gumroad. Keep an eye on the video's description. I will add a link at some point in the near future. If you're enjoying this video and want to see more like it, please hit the like button, subscribe, comment, share, and press the notification bell icon. Many thanks in advance. We can now reduce the size of the geometry node editor window and open up a shader window. In the Properties window, click on the Shader tab. Ensuring that our shape is selected, click New and give our shader a name. I will call mine Stone Base. If you can't see anything in the shader window, hover your mouse over it and press A to select everything in the window, and then press full stop to center it in the view. We are now going to add the various components of our PBR texture to our model. In order for us to see this take shape, let's change our viewport settings to Material Preview by clicking here. Back in the shader window, let's add 4 image nodes. We can do this by hovering our cursor over the window and pressing Shift A, then S for older versions of Blender, and then type in Image. Choose Image Texture. Connect the color output from the image texture to the base color input on the principled BSDF. If you have Node Wrangler plugin enabled in Edit Preferences, then select the image texture node and press Ctrl-T. This will add in a texture coordinate and mapping node. If you don't have Node Wrangler, you will need to add these in manually using Shift-A and searching for them. Now, ensuring that your image texture is selected, press Shift-Ctrl-D to duplicate the image texture node. Then click and drag it beneath the previous image texture node. Repeat this until you have a total of 4 image texture nodes. Because you held down the Control key along with the Shift-D, your vector inputs on your image texture nodes should already be connected to the mapping node vector output. If not, connect them now. In the texture coordinate node, swap the UV output for the object output. Now connect the second image texture node color output to the roughness input on the principled BSDF. Connect the next image texture node color output to the normal input on the principled BSDF. Add a bump node and place it between the bump image texture and the principled BSDF. On the bump node, set the strength to 0.1. Change the image texture color output to the height on the bump input. Add a normal map node and connect the normal output to the normal input on the bump node. We are now ready to link up our PBR texture files with our shader. Click on the Open button on the top image texture node. Select your diffuse or color PBR texture file. Do the same for the other files, roughness or smoothness, bump, and normal. For all image texture nodes apart from the diffuse, change the color space to non-color. Your model now has PBR stone texture. However, you are likely to find visible seams where the texture is breaking apart to wrap around the shape. To blend these, try the following. Shift-select all 4 image texture nodes. Holding down the Alt key on any one of your image texture nodes, change the drop-down currently labeled as Flat to Box. This setting should instantly change for all selected image textures because you have held down the Alt key. Hold down the Alt key again and change the image texture node's blend amount to 0.5 and press Enter. As you can see, our rock model has an entirely seamless texture. You can always play around with the scale on the mapping node if you are not happy with the size of the tiling. This looks great, but your model's textures and meshing are likely to fail when exported to another application or used in a game. So next, we're going to do 2 things. Reduce our model's mesh so that it is somewhere nearer to low poly, and then bake the high poly PBR plus all important detail onto a low resolution export and game ready mesh. In the outliner, ensure that the stone high model is selected. Now bring your cursor back to the 3D viewport. Now press Shift D to duplicate it, and then right click immediately afterwards to keep the duplicate in the same place as the original. Rename the duplicate to Stone Low. Select Stone High under the Modifier tab. Apply the Geometry Node modifier. Now select Stone Low, and this time change the subdivision level to a lower number. It might be a good idea to hide Stone High first, so that you can see the Stone Low model properly. Bring the subdivision number down to a bearable level, and then apply the Geometry Node modifier. You now have 2 models. One of them is high resolution and the other low resolution. Next, we're going to bake the PBR textures and details from the high resolution model onto the low resolution model. But before we can do that, we need to unwrap our Stone Low and build a new shader for it. Start by selecting Stone Low and removing the attached shader. Add a new shader, call it something like Stone Model 1. Now, tab into Edit mode, press 2 on your keyboard to go into Edge Select mode, and select seams like this around the edges of your model. This will help break apart the textures of your model so that they can be flattened out and preserved as image files for your new PBR texture. Once you've done this, right-click and select Mark Seam. Press 3 for Face Select mode and then A to select all. With all of your faces selected, press U and choose Unwrap from the pop-up menu. Now unhide the Stone High model and open up a new UV editor window. With your mouse hovering over it, press A to select all faces. Let's tidy things up a little. Click on the UV drop-down menu and choose Pack Islands. Change the rotation method to cardinal, increase the margin to 0.01, then click on OK. Your model is now unwrapped. Before we get baking, we need to build up the shader for Stone Low. Ensure that Stone Low model is still selected, go to the shader window, create 3 new image texture nodes. You don't need to add coordinate or mapping nodes to this shader. Connect the image texture node color to base color, and the second color to roughness, and the third color to normal. Next, add a normal map node and drop it in between the third texture node and the principal BSDF. Now click on the New button on the first image texture node and change the name from Untitled to something like Stone Model 1 Diffuse. The height and the width of the image will depend on the size of your model. If your model in the real world is a meter or so in height or width, keep it on 1024, which equals to 1K. If it is 2 meters, set it to 2048. You can double, treble, quadruple these numbers to match the correct scale for your model. Leave all of the settings as they are and click on OK. Repeat the same settings for the second and third image texture nodes, calling them Stone Model 1 Roughness and Stone Model 1 Normal. Change the color space for both Roughness and Normal to non-color. That's our shader setup. Now for the baking. At this point, I like to split my shader window and change the new window to Image Editor. This will allow me to see the results of each baked texture file. Go over to the outliner and select the stone high model. Holding down the Control key, select the stone low model, so that both models are selected. It's important to do it in this order from high to low. The high resolution model should appear orange-red and the low more of a lighter orange. With them both selected, go over to the shader window and select the diffuse image texture. This will be the target for baking from the high to the low, all of the diffuse texture information. Now click on the Render tab in the Properties window. This is where it gets a little complicated, so pay attention. Change Render Engine to Cycles. Under Sampling and Render, set the maximum samples to 8. Scroll down to Light Paths. Under Max Bounces, change all settings from Total to Transparent to 2. Under Caustics, switch off Reflective and Refractive. Scroll down to Performance, make sure that the tile size is set to the same size you chose when setting up the image texture for the stone low model. Now scroll down to Bake. Change Bake Type to Diffuse, and under Influence, switch off Direct and Indirect. Enable Selected to Active and set Extrusion to 0.05. Now the easy part, press Bake. If you've done everything I've just mentioned, you should see a loading bar here. If not, please step back to the point when we control selected our models and take it from there. If it has worked, after a short period of time, your baked diffuse texture file should appear in this window here. When it does show up, you must click on the Image menu and save your file in a sensible place. Now repeat this for roughness by firstly clicking on the roughness image texture and then changing the bake type to roughness. Then bake. Don't forget to save your image file. Finally, select your normal image texture, change bake type to normal, and then bake. If artifacts come through on the normal map, don't worry. Go back to Selected to Active and change the extrusion amount, perhaps a 0.01. Then you can have a go rebaking the normal map. Once you have finished baking and saving your image files, you should now have a low poly model on your screen, which doesn't look that different from the high resolution version. And best of all, you can bring it into your games and other 3D applications. Perhaps you remain unconvinced by this technique for turning simple objects into detailed stone. Not to worry, here are some examples of me applying the same effect on various models and using different PBR textures. Are you sold? I hope you've enjoyed this Blender tutorial. If you have, don't forget to like it, subscribe, hit the notification bell for more of the same, and I'll see you in the next one.